This is the Read to Lead podcast, episode 91.
Hi, I'm Clay Clark, author of Thrive, How to Take Control of Your Destiny and Move Beyond Surviving Now. You've taken a crucial first step by listening to this. It's the Read to Lead podcast with my friend Jeff Brown. Boom!
It's sometimes when things don't go well that we get so much more from to kind of dig deeper and discover talents and strengths and tap into resources we didn't even know we had.
Welcome to the Read to Lead podcast with Jeff Brown. Jeff believes that if you desire to achieve true success in business and in life, then consistent and intentional reading is a must. The Read to Lead podcast will not only help you narrow this ever-important reading list, but also bring you key insights and valuable feedback from some of today's most successful and inspiring authors. And now, here's Jeff.
Hi there, and welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to your personal and professional growth. Each and every week, you and I get to sit down with a successful and inspiring author and chat about their latest book and their areas of expertise. Things like leadership, business, personal development, career, marketing, entrepreneurship, productivity, and much, much more. Well, in today's episode, we'll sit down with Margie Worrell, author of Brave, 50 Everyday Acts of Courage to Thrive in Work, Love, and Life. And I plan to ask Margie about the importance of owning your individuality, how to say no with more grace and less guilt, the keys for getting through those difficult conversations, including guidelines for giving feedback successfully, and a lot more. And be sure and stick around to the end of our conversation when I'll have more information on how you can join the Train the Brave challenge called 10 Days to Becoming a Braver You. This is a $99 value that Margie is making available to you as a Read to Lead listener for free with the purchase of her new book. Love to have you join our private Facebook group. If you're in the United States, you can do so as simply as texting the phrase Read to Lead, one word, to 33444. We'll get you added to our newsletter list and make sure you get an invite to that private Facebook group where you can interact with many other Read to Lead listeners and talk about some of your favorite books. If your mobile device isn't handy or you live outside the United States, visit readtoleadpodcast.com/group. This episode of Read to Lead is supported by SoFi, a leading marketplace lender, where you could save thousands when you refinanced your federal and private student loans at lower rates with SoFi. As a listener to this show, you can take advantage of a special $200 welcome bonus when you refinance your student loans. Just go to SoFi.com/read-to-lead. That's SoFi.com/read-to-lead. Margie Worrell provides leadership, communication, and courage-building programs for organizations, including NASA, the UN Foundation, AOL, and Accenture. And as a columnist for Forbes and Huffington Post, her advice is featured throughout leading global media. Her latest book is called Brave, 50 Everyday Acts of Courage to Thrive in Work, Love, and Life. Welcome. We're excited to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be talking to you.
Well, I want to give a hat tip to you and your publisher, Wiley, and I wish more publishers, more authors did this, but one of the things I loved right away about the book was that you pretty much can't turn a page without seeing a highlighted piece of text or, a sentence that is pulled out and brought to your attention. Things like you can't live intentionally if you're forever living hurriedly, or, other people won't value how special you are unless you do. Own your individuality. And everywhere you turn, there are these fantastic quotes, which for people like me or anybody reading the book, really, it makes it so easy then to share this, via social media. I've got this treasure trove of quotes now I'm prepared to go tweet about, and I love that about the book.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Part of the reason when my publisher said to me, we'd love you to write another book, and I said, the only book I'm really inspired to write is one that busy people could pick up and very quickly get something from it that was inspirational without having to, put on their PhD hat and really dive deep. I just wanted something that people could just just get that quick dose of inspiration and practical advice in, and hence why it's 50 different chapters. It was one of them short and sharp, and you can read on the go.
Yeah, that's another plus for me. It's divided into 5 sections. So we have Live Purposely, we have Speak Bravely, Work Passionately, Dig Deep, and Dare Boldly. We won't necessarily have time to go into all of those areas, but I do want to cover at least a few. Without being aware of it, you say we can grow more attached to what others think of us, or what we think they think, than we think of ourselves. What kind of problems do we create for ourselves, Margie, when we fall into that trap?
Yeah, well, essentially we're sort of surrendering our own truth, and we're laying it on the altar of people pleasing and keeping people happy. And we're not always aware we do it. I mean, so often it's very unconscious. We're not thinking, oh, will everybody say? But all the time that's being criticized, or, having people not think well of us, it gets in the way of us expressing ourselves fully. And, the core of living bravely is about that freedom to simply be who it is that we really are, and not to let what people think or fear run our lives.
Well, why do you feel it's so important that we own our individuality?
Yeah, we are social beings, we're wired to want to belong, and we're wired to want to fit in. And so we have to continually really just embrace who we are and not compare ourselves and try and think, I've got to be more like this person and that person, but just to really embrace what makes us unique and what makes us different. Because when all we do is try and fit in and to conform, then all we have to offer is really conformity, and really deprive others and ourselves of what it is that we have to bring. And so it's so important to embrace what makes us different. Don't try and dial it down, because that's our greatest asset.
And there's this idea too of living life with intention. Margie says, clarifying your highest intention for your life will transform how you live it. Why do you believe in this so strongly, Margie?
Oh, look, when I talk about clarifying an intention, I think it's very easy. I mean, we're wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, right? So therefore, by default, we'll naturally go that path of least resistance. What's the easiest thing to do? And we can just kind of end up like a ship adrift at sea, going with the currents and the winds and whatever kind of way life takes us. But often, if we're not intentional about what it is we want to do and who we want to be, and then we can end up someplace we don't really like. That's pretty uninspiring. And so having that intention, like what is it I stand for? Who is it I really want to be? It acts like a compass. And sometimes in following that compass, we have to do something that's not so easy, that takes us out of our comfort zone, that can require hard work. But we're clear about why we need to do that, because that's what we're standing for. That's what we're working towards. So it really is like just setting your GPS. This is what I'm about. This is what I stand for. It's what I want to achieve and who I want to be. Otherwise we can end up, in a place we're not really very excited about.
Well, what isn't talked out gets acted out, Margie says. Margie, what are some of the keys that you recommend to getting through those difficult conversations?
Yeah, well, look, just a moment ago we were talking about having an intention for our life. Well, we actually need to think about what's the highest intention we have for the conversation that we're going to have, to talking through the issues. And, any relationship you have that you value, where you're feeling either frustrated or undervalued or hurt or angry, it's an indication there's a conversation that you need to have that you're not having. And we need to really start with, for the sake of what? Why is it that I want to have this conversation? What's the positive intention I'm trying to serve? And then recognizing that, we've only got one side of the story. The way we see things is based on how we are through the lens we're looking at it through. Someone else might feel very differently. They might have a very different take on it. So being willing to just ask questions and listen. What is it? How is it that they see? What's the story that they're bringing to it? What are the emotions they're feeling around the issues? And I think when we go into a conversation with an earnest, sincere desire to get a positive outcome, not just for ourselves, but for the other person, even if it's maybe giving critical feedback, then it really shifts the tone and how people receive it. But that seek first to understand before being understood advice is really worthwhile. Just don't go in there just going, this is how it is. Go in there trying to understand and bridge the understanding between the two of you.
Well, virtually all of us, I think, struggle with saying no. What are some ways that you suggest, Margie, for saying no with more grace and a little less guilt?
Yeah, well, look, absolutely. And it's something, when I write this book, I write the advice I need to follow too, right? So it's not that I don't have these struggles myself. And for all of us, we live in this era of choice. We have so many good things we can do, so many great causes, so many opportunities, so many ways we can use our time and talents every day. But the problem is, of course, if we're saying yes to everything, we can end up spreading ourselves really thin and not doing the most important things. So it begins by really clarifying what is most important to you. What are your highest priorities? What are your biggest values? Because when we line up what we commit to, what we say yes to, with what we're most committed to, balance naturally sorts itself out. But we have to have that clarity first. So when it comes to saying no, just recognize that whenever you say yes to something, you are by default saying no to something else, whether it's just time with your family, time to just invest in yourself, time with other people, time on the other pursuits and goals. So one is getting real clarity. What is most important to you? Then when it comes to saying no, you can say no to the request without saying no to the person that's asking of it. So thank you so much for asking me. It sounds wonderful, or it's a great opportunity. It's something I'd love to do it. However, I have other things on. I have these other commitments, and I'd be doing a disservice to everybody if I took this on. So you're letting the person know that you appreciate it, you appreciate them. You just can't commit at this point. And then, of course, you can always, make a counter offer and say, well, I can do this, or this part of it, or I can do it on this timeline, but not, what you're asking. So I think it's just always important to make sure, if you value the relationship with someone, you take care of them and treat them with respect. And the old saying, no is a complete sentence. I disagree with that. I think that just saying no to somebody, particularly if, you value that relationship, it can be quite offensive to them. So it's really important to take care of them while letting them know you have other things going on.
Well, I recently had an email conversation, Margie, that was not starting off real well. And a trusted friend said, you've got to pick up the phone. And I'm so glad I did, because it made all the difference. What are some situations where you advocate that we talk instead of type?
Well, you know what? Sometimes saying no can be a good one. Someone might send me a note and say, hey, can you do this? Now, sometimes I'll send a note right back and say, no, I can't. Thanks so much for asking. But if it may be that I really care about that relationship, and I'm mindful I don't want them to take it the wrong way. I'm trying to take care of the person who's asked me. So I'll pick up the phone, because picking up the phone lets people know, just the act of doing that, it shows more care for the person. It shows more care for the relationship. Likewise, if you're going to have any sort of, it's about anything where, the emotions can run high. You could be giving critical feedback. You could be apologizing for something. Picking up the phone can just allow you to have such a better outcome than going backwards and forwards with rounds and rounds of text messages or emails. And also, when there's emotions that are kind of running high, people are more likely to misinterpret it and to assign meaning that you may never have intended, because people just, when we've got a written word, there's no nuance in that. They can't see our facial expression. They can't hear that we're sort of being fun and playful and a little bit sarcastic. They can read all sorts of things into the written word that may not be there at all. So really important to be careful about not becoming over reliant on our devices, on your phone or sitting behind the computer, because I've seen a lot of angst, a lot of hurt, a lot of misunderstanding caused because people were too thoughtless or too lazy or too timid to pick up the phone or to go and talk to someone in person. And, technology provides great tools for communicating, but they can be used really bluntly when we use them the wrong way.
You mentioned a moment ago feedback, and in the book, I think you call it an act of service to give it. Now, there's no self or rather fail-safe way to give feedback. Obviously, I think you do want to do that in person as much as you can. But what are some guidelines we can put into practice to increase our chances of giving feedback successfully? I'm thinking particularly on your ACE feedback formula that you share.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a formula of 4 steps in there, and what begins with just asking permission. You may feel like, hey, I'm going to give it to them anyway. But when I say to you, hey, I've got some feedback I'd like to give you, are you okay with that? It essentially turns the table, and they're saying yes, please give it to me. So it makes it easier for them to hear it because they've essentially given you the permission and invited you to give the feedback. Then is letting people know, what it is you've observed. What's the specific thing you want to give feedback on? What's the consequences of that? How does that impact the people around you, and how does that impact them, the way that they've been acting? So, when you're checking your phone, when we're sitting in meetings, people feel like you're not really paying attention to them. Or when you turn up late, we feel like you value your time above everybody else's. Or when you cut people off before they've finished a sentence, people feel like you're not interested in what they have to say. So share your observations and the impact that has. And then how is it that what's the desired behavior? What would you like to see people doing? It'd be great if in the future you could come on time, and letting people know, be specific about the behavior. Don't be adding too much waffle each side, the whole negative, positive, putting a sandwich around it so that, you're fluffing it around. Just get to the point. What is it that you see people are doing that isn't serving them, and that could be hurting their relationships, their reputation, damaging trust? And just be to the point, succinct, and then how that impacts them, how that impacts others, and what's the behavior you'd like to see. I think people really value candor, and I certainly know that in the workplace, it's great to be able to count on people to speak the truth versus kind of hide behind it and say one thing when they're thinking another.
There's a quote at the beginning of part 3 of the book, Work Passionately, from John Ruskin that says, "The highest reward for a person's toil is not what they get for it, but what they become by it." What does that concept, Margie, ultimately mean to you?
Oh, yeah. Look, it's a really, I love that quote, and I was glad to be able to put it in there. When you think about the work that we do every day, and it's sometimes things don't go to plan, and people let us down, and plans fall apart, and things happen that aren't the way we want. And I think it's easy to get demoralized and feel, just start to feel like, what's the point? But it's who we grow into as human beings. Sometimes when things don't go well, that we get so much more from, and that we have the opportunity to kind of dig deeper and discover talents and strengths and tap into resources we didn't even know we had. And so I think, the work we do, it's not just about what we get, whether it's money or prestige, status, fame, influence. It is about who we get to grow into. And, you look around at some people who've had to deal with some really tough circumstances in their lives. And, most of them will say, I wouldn't be who I was today if it wasn't for what I had to go through. And therefore I'm grateful for it, even though it wasn't easy and I wouldn't have consciously chosen it. And I think with our work, just, the purpose behind our work, just work like what you do matters because it does matter, and the spirit we bring to things really matters.
Well, growth notwithstanding, tough circumstances are still that tough. If you've ever looked back on a decision you've made that you'd love a do-over on, I might have some help for you, particularly if it's in the financial category. Maybe you've overextended yourself in the past, or the rates you're paying on your student loans or mortgage are just not quite what you wish they were. Well, the Read to Lead podcast is brought to you by SoFi. They're a leading marketplace lender that offers student loan refinancing, mortgages, and personal loans for ambitious professionals, people just like you. Now, if you're carrying high student loan balances, you could save thousands by refinancing and consolidating your federal and private student loans at a lower rate. In fact, SoFi borrowers save on average $14,000 over the life of their loans. In addition to savings, SoFi members benefit from unemployment protection. Should you lose your job, SoFi pauses your payment and provides access to a career service team for personalized career planning and job search assistance. To check out a full list of products and benefits they offer, just visit SoFi.com/read to lead. That's SoFi.com/read to lead. Now, for a limited time, and as a listener of Read to Lead, you are eligible for a special $200 welcome bonus when you refinance your student loans with SoFi. Just go to SoFi.com/read to lead for this special offer and find your rate online within minutes. All loans, by the way, made by SoFi Lending Corp. NMLS number 1121636 and CFL license number 6054612. Well, Margie says you shouldn't wait to be told you're a leader, but you should assume leadership. Margie, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean walking into the CEO's office and saying, "Hey, get out of here! I'm taking over your desk." It could sound like I'm suggesting that. I'm not. That would be really foolish and pretty disrespectful. However, so often we complain about our boss or our manager and go, oh, they never, they always just take the soft option, or they don't speak the truth, or, they're sticking with the status quo, whatever it is. And, Gandhi once said, be the change you want to see in the world. And when I say be the leader you wish you had in the book, it's the same sentiment that I'm really encouraging. Don't wait for someone to say, hey, here's a title, or here's an office, or here's a big pay increase. Just act as the leader that you wish you had, the leader that you aspire to be. Speak up, step up, put your hand up, take initiative, challenge things, treat people kindly, encourage people around you, even though you may never, feel like, well, it's my job to do that. Just do it anyway. Because you just imagine, I often say to people, like, if you were running this business, what would you do? What would you do that you aren't doing? What would you stop doing that you are doing? And I think that it's just such a great way to approach our work and our life, to just really step it up and be a leader.
Well, you caution us, too, not to hide behind our humility. Help us better understand how to go from what we traditionally think is tooting our own horn and stroking our ego to what you say is really sharing relevant information about ourselves with the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I grew up on a dairy farm in rural Australia, one of 7 kids, and in my family growing up, anyone who was too much of a show pony would be quickly slammed down. It was to be told that you were stuck up or anything was the ultimate insult. So I certainly grew up in an environment where it wasn't celebrated to promote yourself. And no one likes someone who is constantly bragging about themselves. It's painful to be around those people. However, humility, like any strength, can be overdone. And too often, our fear of what people might think, our fear of people thinking we're being self-promotional, gets in the way of us really sharing what it is we'd like to do, what we're good at, and letting the right people know this is who I am and this is what I'd love to achieve, and I'd love your help with it. So I often say to people, it comes to self-promotion, particularly those who are really reticent to promote themselves, is get out of your own way. Stop this being about you and what you can get, and look at it through the lens of what it is you would love to give. What is it that you love to do? Where are your strengths? What are your talents? What are your skills and expertise? And where do you add a lot of value and make a really meaningful contribution in your work, in your community, in the world? And when you look at it through that lens of what it is you have to give, it can help you get past this whole thing of, well, I want to be humble, and just go, hey, I'd really love to be on this team. I'd really love to have an opportunity like this. I'd really value a position of this sort of level of responsibility, because this is what I'd love to bring, and this is the skills and talents I'd love to develop more and share more widely. And I think it can really help people to get over themselves, not be a brag, but to promote themselves in a way that leaves everyone better off.
Well, we've covered quite a bit of material from parts 1, 2, and 3 of the book so far. I want to ask you some questions, Margie, not directly related to the book. But before I do, is there anything else from maybe parts 4 or 5 you want to make sure we know?
Look, I think at the core of, parts 4, it's really about being resilient. That whole section is around what do you do when life doesn't go the way you want it to? And my only comment on that is life will always not go the way you want it to. And so it is about being resilient, goes hand in hand with being brave, because we have to be able to bounce back, not let our failures and setbacks define us, and to just continue to move forward even when at times we feel like just giving up. So, and obviously the last section of the book is really about stepping into action, and how do you actually get into action when the rubber hits the road.
Is it safe to assume you're a fan of that song "Brave" by Sarah Bareilles?
Yeah,
I think
is it Bareilles? Yeah, I am. I wished I had her voice, though I do try and sing it whenever I'm listening to it. I sing it loud anyway.
Well, I'm wondering, Margie, if you can name for us a couple of books you've read, or maybe books that you're currently reading that have impacted you, and share how or why they've impacted you as they have.
Yeah, well, look, actually, one I've just recently read, the recency effect it plays right here now, is called Essentialism, and it's just a terrific book in terms of, we talked about saying no, and it's really about what are the few essential things you really need to focus on, and being able to discern the essential few from the trivial many, so that you can focus your time, your talents on where you add the most value and make the highest contribution, and be clear about all the rest of the things that you need to say no to or outsource or just not do at all. So that's a terrific book for anyone who just feels like they're constantly spread too thin, constantly distracted, and they just want to have more focus in their lives.
Well, yeah, you probably are not surprised that many of our guests, in addition to being authors, are also doing a fair amount of public speaking. I know that's the case for you, and I'd be curious to know, Margie, what are some of your tips for delivering an impactful and memorable public talk?
You know what? I had somebody contact me about this morning through my website, just saying some of my advice had really helped them. And at the core of it, I once heard when I started speaking many years ago, I didn't even know there was such thing as a professional speaker, truly, about 12 years ago. Never heard of one, didn't know you could get paid to speak. So for me, it was something I discovered by simply just doing what I'm passionate about. But I heard someone say, and I'm not sure who to quote here, but don't get up to speak unless you want to change the world. And for me, getting up to speak, I always say a little prayer before I get up and speak, and it's like, God, just give me the words that will make the biggest impact and touch the hearts and minds of those I'm speaking to. And it totally shifts the space from being about me. What will people think of me? Will they think I'm funny? Will they think I'm clever? Will I get it right? Will I follow all the 101,000 rules of giving a good speech and being a great public or professional speaker, to how is it I can serve the people who'll be listening to me in the most profound and important ways. And I think that, early on I went to a lot of different programs on how to be a good speaker and how to make money speaking, and, all the rules for, how to move around the stage. And I could go on and on and on. And at the core of it, I think they can distract us from what matters most. It's not about us proving anything to anyone, and it's not about us being liked and getting rave reviews. It is about the value we have to bring and the impact we can make on those who are there. And I think when we get our ego, we just get rid of that ego, because I think it undermines the presence that we bring to the stage. I don't think it amplifies it. I think it undermines us. And to really focus on how can I serve the people who are here. because I think that really helps to just dilute our fear of what people will think of us, because it's not about us, it's about them.
Calms the nerves at the same time, oftentimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I will always do a few big deep breaths. Even I've been speaking now for years, and sometimes. Last week I was with Richard Branson actually on his island at Necker Island, and I was invited to interview him. And I've interviewed lots of people and facilitated a lot of different Q&As, and as well as giving a lot of speeches. But Richard Branson was by far the most high-profile person that I've ever had the chance to interview and to draw out his insights and his wisdom and his life experiences. And, of course, everybody around me, and there were a lot of extraordinary people there and astronauts and billionaires going, "Oh, you're nervous." And it was them saying it to me was like, "Oh, my God, I guess I should be nervous." and as I was kind of leading up to it, and I could feel people were nervous for me, like, "You're interviewing Richard Branson tonight." and it started to make me a bit nervous. And then I just had to stop and think, he's a human being. I mean, he's an accomplished and a famous human being, but he is just a human being. And this isn't about me. And this isn't about him. This is about how I can help pull out the most valuable insights he has in the hour that we have for the group of people that are here. And, it's the same exercise, just getting out of our own way and then taking a few big, deep breaths and just connecting into that place. I think ultimately, I'd like to think I did a reasonably good job, and I think that is honestly that's the number one bit of advice I give to any speaker. Not how to move around the stage and make it funny and all of that, because I think that naturally comes when we're in the right place.
Well, Margie, to those whose lives you've been able to touch, family, friends, colleagues, clients, at the end of it all, how do you hope to be remembered?
I'd like to think, I would like to think that I will be remembered as somebody who encouraged and challenged people to think bigger about what they could do in the world, and to have the courage to go and do it, and to have walked that talk myself.
Well, what's next on the horizon for you? I know the book's not been out too long, but what are you and your team working on now that you're excited about?
Well, I have to say, having just had a week with Richard Branson, I'm all full of possibilities. I don't think I'm going to launch a space travel company, but no, I would. For me, I really I have an online TV channel called Raw Courage TV, and I'd really love to be able to grow that to reach millions of people, not thousands, but millions. And there's a vast gap between where I am and where I'd like to be. And, obviously so many people think of Oprah, but just to make that kind of Oprah-sized impact when it comes to just inspiring people and giving them just practical tools to make it all happen. So Raw Courage TV is where it's at, and no doubt there'll be a lot of other opportunities and things I'll be doing as well. And I'm sure there'll be some more books down the road. I'm sure there's little seeds there right now that are growing. I just, I'm not even focused on them, no.
Well, I know as I read the book, I was constantly taking notes about things that I wanted to pull from the book and use with my own clients and with my own future presentations. So many great nuggets of wisdom here. And we just want to say thanks, Margie, for you taking time out of your day to share more about it with us. We really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for just giving me this forum to do so. You're a great interviewer.
Hey, connect with Margie on Twitter. She's very active there, offering lots of great content. She's at Margie Worrell on Twitter. That's at MargieWarrell, at Margie Worrell on Twitter. We'll put a link to her Twitter handle in the show notes page for today's episode, along with a number of other books and resources we talked about today, like Margie's website, margieworrell.com, and information on that Train the Brave challenge called 10 Days to Becoming a Braver You. You can visit the show notes page for that link, which is simply readtoleadpodcast.com/091, or go to trainthebrave.com. There you can enter your first name, your email address, and then your receipt number for the book, and you'll get access to the Train the Brave Challenge, a $99 value, absolutely free. Remember our sponsor, SOFI.com/read to lead. That's SOFI.com/read to lead, and earn yourself $200 when you refinance your student loans with SOFI. I so appreciate you listening to the podcast, and I hope you're enjoying it. Let me know what you think, Jeff, at readtoleadpodcast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Well, that does it for this week. I look forward to seeing you, as always, next time for the next episode of the Read to Lead podcast.
Thanks so much for listening to the Read to Lead podcast. As a subscriber, we challenge you to be more than just a passive listener. Become a vital member of the community. Visit us on the web at readtoleadpodcast.com. Until next time, remember, leaders read and readers lead.